Lesson 12. The cardiorespiratory system. The structure of the lungs, gaseous exchange, and breathing mechanism. At the end of this lesson, you will be able to name the components of the cardiorespiratory system, describe the structure of the lungs and their associated airways, describe the respiratory pathway, explain how gaseous exchange occurs, and describe breathing mechanism. The cardiorespiratory system consists of the heart and blood vessels working with the respiratory system, which consists of the lungs and its associated airways, to carry oxygen and nutrients to the working muscles and to the heart itself, and also to remove waste products including carbon dioxide and lactic acid. The cardiorespiratory system consists of the lungs and its associated airways, which are the mouth, throat, trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, and alveoli, or air sacs. It also consists of the heart, the blood, and the blood vessels. In this lesson, we are going to look at the structure and function of the lungs. Let's look at the structure first of all. The lungs are located in the thoracic cavity, surrounded by the rib cage and the sternum to the front and the vertebral column to the back. The muscles associated with breathing are the diaphragm, which is located underneath the lungs here, and also the intercostal muscles, which are located in between each of the ribs here. When we breathe in air, it passes through our mouth, down the back of the throat, which is called the pharynx. At the top of the trachea then is the voice box, and then the main windpipe itself, which is the trachea, carries air down into the lungs. The trachea branches into two branches called bronchi, and each bronchus enters the right and the left lung. Within the lung then, the bronchus breaks down into smaller airways called bronchioles, and at the end of the bronchioles then are the air sacs or alveoli. Surrounding these air sacs then is a network of blood capillaries. So the structure again, it starts with the mouth, the back of the throat, which is called the pharynx. The voice box at the top of the trachea here is the larynx. And then the airways are the trachea, the bronchus, the bronchioles, and the alveoli, which are surrounded by capillaries. The respiratory pathway is the path of air as it enters through the lungs. So we breathe in through either the nose or the mouth, and here the air will be filtered and warmed. The nose contains tiny little hairs which help to remove dust and pollen before it enters into our lungs. The air then passes over the back of the throat, the pharynx, and over the voice box, the larynx, and then it continues down the trachea or the windpipe, which divides into left and right bronchi. From there then the bronchi subdivide into bronchioles, and the air then is carried through those bronchioles into the alveoli or air sacs. So to review the structure of lungs, click on the button here for a short video. The exchange of gases, also known as gaseous exchange. When we breathe in, the air that we take in carries a relatively high amount of oxygen compared with the amount of oxygen that's circulating within our bloodstream. At the same time, the amount of carbon dioxide in the bloodstream is higher than the amount of carbon dioxide that has been taken in the air that we have breathed in. When we talk about exchange of gases, we are talking about the exchange of oxygen, which is coming in the air that we've breathed, for carbon dioxide, which has accumulated in the blood. So the two gases that are being exchanged are oxygen and carbon dioxide. Surrounding the air sacs, or the alveoli, as I've mentioned already, is this network of capillaries. So oxygen diffuses or passes through the walls of the alveoli across the network of blood capillaries and from there enters into the red blood cells. At the same time, carbon dioxide diffuses from the capillaries into the alveoli, where it's then carried back through the bronchioles, the bronchus and the trachea, and eventually expired. Breathing mechanism. The lungs are made of elastic tissue. So, although they're not like muscle in that they cannot contract, they can change in size and shape as a result of the way the chest cavity changes in size and shape when we breathe. So, you could compare them to a balloon, which can expand when it fills with air and then it can recoil back down when it empties. So the two main muscles that are associated with breathing are the diaphragm and the intercostal muscles. And we mentioned already, the diaphragm is situated directly underneath the lungs, and the intercostal muscles are located in between each of the ribs. So the diaphragm then, in its relaxed state, is in a domed shape. When we breathe in during inspiration, it contracts, and this causes it to flatten. And this increases the size of the chest cavity from top to bottom. During expiration then it relaxes and it returns back to its domed position, and this then will decrease the size of the chest cavity. The intercostal muscles then, which are between the ribs, during inspiration they contract, causing the rib cage and the sternum to lift out and up, and again this causes the thoracic cavity to increase in size. During expiration then they relax and the ribcage and sternum move back down into position again, and the size of the thoracic cavity decreases again. It is the contraction and relaxation of these muscles that brings about breathing. And these muscles are under the control of our autonomic system. Our brain receives information regarding oxygen levels and carbon dioxide levels in our blood from the nerve cells of the aorta, which is the largest artery in the body, and the carotid artery. And when levels of oxygen are getting too low or carbon dioxide levels are getting too high, the brain sends a signal to the diaphragm to contract. When the diaphragm contracts, the intercostal muscles between the ribs also contract, and the two of these muscles working together then cause the rib cage to expand. This then causes the volume of the chest cavity to increase, which causes air to be sucked into the lungs. Gaseous exchange then takes place in the alveoli, and oxygen and carbon dioxide are swapped over between the capillaries and the alveoli. And then when oxygen levels begin to increase again in our bloodstream, the brain instructs the diaphragm to relax, the intercostal muscles also relax, the rib cage drops back down into place, and then this pushes out the air from the lungs, which is now rich in carbon dioxide and which needs to be expired. Our rate of breathing then is dependent on how much oxygen our bodies require. So when activity levels increase, more oxygen is required, and this then causes our rate of respiration to increase.